talking about issues that have been covered not only on these programs, but you've got graphics and things that actually we can't convey here on radio.
Well, Kevin, I think it's interesting, just as Gordon was mentioning, this is from a cultural perspective, from a spiritual perspective, and certainly from a financial and economic perspective, this is a pendulum in swing, and it tends to find its midpoint and not be able to hold it, although we wish it would. So there really is a sense of out-of-balance positioning, and that's what Stephen Roach is getting to, what Nero Rubini is getting to, and certainly what we've been discussing the last few minutes. From a social and spiritual standpoint, the pendulum is in swing. I appreciate your comments, Gordon, on that not being the end of the story.
Gordon, one of the things that we've talked about recently is the leadership role, the people who've seen this particular change, this transition in our social system and our economy coming. There are people who are actually awake to what's going on. They're concerned about what's going on. They're taking action to prepare themselves for what's going on. And I'd like to hear what your opinion on this is. When you've got people who actually have read the Bible and understand God's law and are still operating with that as their main driver, do you feel that those people will play a leadership role during a time when people have lost all hope?
Well, especially when people have lost hope, because essentially, and quoting Havel here, I'm thinking of, he said a number of things about hope, but he describes hope as a state of mind, not the state of the world. And Havel says that hope in this sort of deep and more powerful sense isn't the same as joy, in that things are going well or having the willingness to invest in enterprises that are obviously heading for success. But for Havel, hope is the ability to work for something simply because it is good, simply because it's right. It's not the same thing as optimism. Hope is not the conviction that something will simply turn out well, but the certainty that because something makes sense, it has a moral reason that it's the right thing to do regardless of how it turns out in the short term. And I think given that hope is something that's essential to human character and human survival, it could be argued whatever your worldview or philosophy or theology, hope is an essential ingredient. It makes us human in a very, very noble and courageous sense. It's a thing we admire about people. When we don't admire people who have a life of ease and simply make better of it. We admire most, I think, the people that are faced with obstacles, that are faced with things that seem impenetrably severe, and they overcome it anyway because they have this sense of courage. And if that's true, then you can look for example after example throughout human history from any culture to find that the people that are most inspiring that we look up to, for example, are the people that have overcome and have done so with hope. And Havel's an example. Solzhenitsyn is certainly an example. He may go down in history as one of the most significant and powerful voices in the 20th century because of the power of the pen, the power of the literary mind to tell a story while he was in the Gulag, memorizing a story that he had not even pen or paper to write with. Every day he would memorize what he was going to write, line upon line, paragraph, page, chapter, until he was finally released from prison and writing and found a beat-up old typewriter that finally fell apart at about the same time he got a diagnosis of cancer and wasn't expected to live 6 months or ever finish his life's work, having endured the miseries of the Gulag. But he did, and he went on to inspire even Khrushchev to get the backbone to finally admit that Stalin was a tyrant. And that was the beginning of the first cracks and fissures that led finally to the fall of the Berlin Wall. And that was because of one man. And that famous speech at Harvard that I think was prophetic in its own right. When it comes to the implications of these ideas to the financial markets, you have to keep in mind that there are life cycles to ideas, to nations, to economies, and in the ebb and flow of that process, every life cycle presents a loss on one side and an opportunity on the other. A foresighted investing is going to mean that spreading the risk prepares the individual or individual communities or groups of investors for whatever comes. And we're in a very interesting place today that the futurists refer to as the 500-year delta. 500 years since what? Well, since the replication of information with Johannes Gutenberg's press, from monastic manuscripts to the point where ideas could be replicated in a faster and shorter order and distributed with greater effectiveness, to the point where now, since Gutenberg, we have more information than we know what to do with. If you look at that reflection, how it's depicted in corporate America, we've had chief technical officers that gave way to CTOs, gave way to CIOs, a chief information officer, Now you'll read in the Harvard Business Review and other academic journals in the business environment about the role of the CKO, Chief Knowledge Officer. But because organizations don't even know what they know, with a kind of a collective assessment to have the power to make decisions based on the strength of that knowledge base, you've got to organize it. But it seems to me that there's one more position that could be created in this context, and it would be the CWO, the Chief Wisdom Officer. Because more than anything, we need the wisdom to step back for the immediacy of our own designs and desires and appetites and needs and expectations and look at the larger picture. How could the current conditions we're facing present us with an extraordinarily helpful opportunity to reassess what we've become as a society, where we're going, and what we can learn from the process in looking at the past.
Well, and the Bible tells us that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. So going back to what we were talking about before, the backbone of that wisdom has to have some sort of, well, like Václav Havel said, metaphysical anchor.
Yeah, a poignant comment, and this is where transcendence holds greater power and authority than anything the markets can tell us alone. We need wisdom today.
What we've been trying to convey to our listeners is, as we talk about the problems in the banking system and as we talk about the decline of the dollar and the changes that are occurring, we've really tried to convey that this is not the end of the world, that this is not just pure doom and gloom. We've been asking people to find areas of hope, and, obviously knowledge of the Bible and a relationship with the Lord is a great place to go with that. But also, like you said, this struggle could be one of the best things that a society that in some ways can be addicted to luxury has to go through so that they learn what's important. Gordon, I really appreciate you joining us. I know David does too.
Thank you, Gordon. We'll look forward to the next bike ride or climbing of a mountain spire when you're out here in Colorado again.
Yeah, really a pleasure, guys, and thanks for allowing me to be a part of your program.
Look forward to doing it again sometime.
Thanks a lot. Once again, you've listened to the McAlvany Weekly Commentary. I'm Kevin Orrick along with David McAlvany. We're found at McAlvany.com. That's McAlvany.com. You can also give us a call for bank ratings, or if you'd like to discuss your portfolio, at 800-525-9556. And again, join us in Overland Park, Kansas on Thursday, August 7th at 6:30 p.m. Call us at 800-525-9556 to book your free reservation. We just want to know how many people are coming. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
This has been the McAlvany Weekly Commentary. The views expressed should not be considered to be a solicitation or a recommendation for your investment portfolio. You should consult a professional financial advisor to assess your suitability for risk and investment. Join us again next week for a new edition of the McAlvany Weekly Commentary.